What if I told you that peace, not pressure, is your greatest power? What if you could stop chasing every moment and start owning it instead? We live in a world that celebrates burnout, glorifies overthinking, and labels exhaustion as commitment. But there's another way, a quieter, stronger, smarter way. Today, let's talk about that shift, from pressure to peace, and why the best leaders, thinkers, and creators choose peace first. We often talk about success. We talk about ambition. We talk about growth, but very rarely do we talk about the state of being that allows all of that to happen sustainably. Peace, not just world peace, not just spiritual peace, but personal, internal, grounded peace. The kind of peace that isn't shaken by a busy schedule or a sharp comment. The kind of peace that lives quietly beneath the noise of a chaotic day and waits patiently for you to return to it. That kind of peace, that is where it all begins. When you think about the moments in life when you've made your best decisions, chances are they weren't made under panic. They weren't made when you were sprinting to meet everyone else's expectations. They were made when you had space, when you had clarity, when your heart was quiet enough to hear your own intuition. This is what peace offers. It gives us a rare window of self, connection in a world that constantly demands our attention. It pulls us back from the edge and reminds us of what truly matters. Peace matters because it brings alignment. So many people live lives filled with achievement, but still feel empty. They accomplish goals that no longer inspire them. They win battles that never should have been fought. Why? Because without peace, we chase the wrong things, we move fast in the wrong direction, we follow noise instead of purpose. Peace is what allows us to align our actions with our values, our pace with our priorities, and our work with our why. Think about a river. When it's rushing violently, it erodes everything in its path. It's loud, it's forceful, it's unstable, but when it flows steadily, peacefully, it brings life to everything it touches. It nourishes, it sustains. That's what peace does to us. When we operate from peace, we become calm forces of impact. We don't burn out, we build. We don't fight for control, we invite collaboration. Peace makes us sustainable. We've been conditioned to believe that pressure is the price of progress, that if you're not overwhelmed, you're not trying hard enough. But peace offers a different narrative. It tells us that doing things well is more important than doing things fast, that showing up with presence is more impactful than showing up with perfection. Peace isn't lazy, it's intentional, it isn't slow, it's strategic, and it isn't soft. It's strong in the quietest, most unshakable way. Most people don't lack motivation, they lack mental space. They wake up with good intentions, but their minds are already full of worry, doubt, urgency. Peace clears the mental clutter, it creates room for vision. When your mind is calm, you can hear new ideas, you can notice details others miss, you can lead with conviction instead of reacting with fear. In this way, peace isn't the absence of activity, it's the foundation of awareness. The greatest leaders in history weren't the loudest ones. They weren't driven by ego or panic. They carried a certain stillness, an inner calm that gave them the ability to see beyond the moment. That's what peace does. It gives you perspective. It keeps you from making emotional decisions during temporary storms. And in a world that celebrates immediacy, peace gives you the power of patience. Peace also protects your energy. Without it, you say yes to things you don't believe in. You stretch yourself for people who don't value you. You work yourself into the ground trying to prove something you were never meant to prove. Peace reminds you that you don't have to do everything, fix everything, or be everything. It helps you prioritize wisely and say no with kindness but firmness. Peace creates healthy boundaries, not brick walls. There's a misconception that peace is only available when life is perfect. But real peace isn't dependent on your circumstances. It's built from the inside out. You can be in a crowded room and still feel centered. You can be in the middle of a conflict and still choose calm. That's the power of trained, practiced peace. It shows up especially when things go wrong. It doesn't stop the storm, but it gives you shelter inside it. And when you start choosing peace, not just occasionally, but as a way of life. You begin to change. You speak slower. You listen deeper. You feel more grounded, more present, more connected to yourself and the people around you. You begin to see how peace is not just an emotional state, it's a strategy. It's not just something you feel, it's something you lead with. That's why peace matters. It's not the result of a good life. It's the reason one is possible. There's a strange comfort in pressure. As exhausting as it is, many people have grown addicted to the feeling of being overwhelmed. It gives us a false sense of importance. When we say things like "I'm swamped," or "I've got a million things going on," we're often met with admiration, as if pressure is proof that we matter, as if being busy is a badge of honor. We've confused being under pressure with being in demand, and over time, we've stopped questioning whether that pressure is even necessary. Pressure keeps us moving, but not always in the right direction. It can trick us into believing that any action, is better than stillness. But just because something is urgent doesn't mean it's important. And just because we're rushing doesn't mean we're progressing. Many people are sprinting through life under immense pressure, only to arrive at a destination they never truly wanted. Pressure convinces us to react quickly, but peace invites us to respond wisely. The more we rely on pressure to function, the more disconnected we become from intentionality. We stop asking ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. We just keep going, hoping the pace will lead to purpose. But pressure doesn't create clarity. It clouds it. It speeds us up, but it also blinds us. It narrows our focus until all we can see is the next task, the next deadline, the next thing to survive. That's not vision. That's survival mode. There's a neurological high that comes with pressure, a flood of adrenaline, a sense of urgency that makes us feel alive. But like any high, it comes with a crash. The body gets tired. The mind becomes foggy, creativity fades, but by then we've already committed to the next round. We chase another project, another responsibility, another problem to solve, not because we want to, but because we don't know how to function without it. That's how pressure becomes addictive. Over time, pressure rewires our definition of worth. We start believing that our value lies in our ability to endure, not in our ability to think, create, or lead. We reward ourselves for staying up all night, for skipping rest, for grinding through pain. But no one talks about what that does to our nervous system, to our relationships, to our self-esteem. We become machines, efficient, maybe, but disconnected from our own humanity. And we start losing sight of the person underneath the performance. There's also a social addiction to pressure. Look around. People compete over who's busier, who's more stressed, who's burning out faster. It becomes a silent contest, and no one wins. Because pressure is not scalable. Eventually, something breaks. It might be your health, your creativity, or your sense of joy, but something always breaks. Yet we keep showing up to this invisible competition, thinking it will earn us respect, when all it really earns us is exhaustion. Pressure often disguises itself as discipline. It looks like hard work. It sounds like commitment. But true discipline is not born from chaos. It's born from consistency. It's born from clarity. When you're truly disciplined, you don't need pressure to keep going. You're guided by purpose, not panic. But when you rely on pressure, everything becomes an emergency. You only move when the fire alarm goes off. You wait until the last moment to act, not because you're lazy, but because pressure has become the only language you understand. Leaders who operate from pressure often create anxious environments. Their teams mirror their urgency, their fear, their stress. People start working in fight or flight mode, always bracing for impact, always trying to avoid mistakes instead of pursuing growth. But when pressure leads, creativity dies. People stop taking risks. They stop asking questions. They start shrinking. And no organization, no relationship, no dream thrives under constant fear. Even in our personal lives, pressure changes the way we show up. We become impatient with people. We lose empathy. We rush through conversations, through meals, through moments that should have made us feel alive. We keep looking ahead instead of being present. Pressure steals our attention and robs us of the experience of being fully here, fully human. We start living like everything is urgent, except the things that actually are. When pressure becomes a habit, peace starts to feel foreign. Stillness becomes uncomfortable. Quiet moments feel like lost time. We don't know how to rest without guilt. We don't know how to pause without panic. And in that constant chase, we miss the point entirely, because we weren't made to live in survival mode. We were made to live awake, aware, and aligned. But as long as we're addicted to pressure, that kind of life remains out of reach. We've been told for years that hustle is the secret ingredient to success, that if you want to make it, you have to grind harder than everyone else. Sleep less, work more, show up earlier, stay later. We've turned the hustle into a culture, a mindset, even a lifestyle. But somewhere along the way, we stopped asking a crucial question: is this actually working? Is constant hustle making us better, or just busier? The problem with hustle is that it only celebrates motion, not meaning. It rewards activity, not clarity. We fall into the trap of measuring our days by how many tasks we completed, not whether those tasks moved us closer to what we actually care about. We check boxes, cross things off, feel productive, and yet we still feel empty. Because hustle keeps us moving, but it rarely lets us reflect. Hustle convinces us that rest is weakness, that slowing down is for people who don't have ambition, and so we push ourselves harder. We convince ourselves that burnout is a phase, not a warning sign. We glorify exhaustion and mistake it for excellence. But the truth is, you don't build a meaningful life by racing through it. You build it by being present enough to recognize what actually matters. There's a reason why some of the most impactful work is done in quiet, slow, deliberate spaces. Creativity doesn't bloom under pressure, it blooms under peace. Wisdom doesn't rush, it listens, waits, and responds. But hustle doesn't give us time for that. It fills every minute, every second, until there's no space left to think. And when there's no space to think, there's no space to lead. We've created a world where being constantly busy is seen as admirable. But how often do we stop to ask, busy doing what? Filling a calendar doesn't mean filling a purpose. You can hustle every hour of every day and still feel like you're going nowhere, because hustle without direction is just movement. And movement without meaning is just noise. The myth of hustle says that more is always better. More hours, more effort, more sacrifices. But success is not just about more. It's about the right focus, the right energy, the right rhythm. Not every moment is meant to be a sprint. Sometimes progress looks like planning. Sometimes it looks like pausing. Sometimes it even looks like walking away. When hustle becomes your default, you lose touch with your natural pace. You start ignoring the signals your body gives you. Fatigue becomes normal. Anxiety becomes background noise. You override the need to recharge because the culture has taught you that winners don't stop. But what if winning actually requires stopping? What if real growth needs rhythm, not relentless pressure? The hustle myth also isolates us. It makes us believe that asking for help is weakness, that delegation is laziness, that collaboration slows us down, and so we pile everything onto our own shoulders, not out of necessity, but out of pride. We become so focused on proving we can do it all, we forget that we were never meant to do it all alone. Hustle praises independence but often kills connection. And then there's the lie that hustle will eventually give us peace, that if we just keep going a little longer, a little harder, we'll finally earn the right to rest. But that moment never really comes, because hustle is a moving target. Every milestone leads to the next. Every finish line becomes a starting line. The more we chase, the more it moves. And before we know it, we've spent our entire lives running toward a peace we never learned how to feel. We need to unlearn the belief that hustle is the only way to matter, the only way to grow, the only way to succeed, because what we really need isn't more hustle, it's more intention, more alignment, more wisdom in how we use our time, our energy, and our attention. The myth of constant hustle has sold us movement at the cost of meaning, and it's time we start reclaiming both. We live in a world that demands a reaction. Notifications, news, opinions, everything is immediate. There's barely a pause between input and response. Someone says something, we answer. A problem arises, we jump in. An email arrives, we reply without thinking. It's constant, rapid, and often unconscious. But the danger of always reacting is that we stop creating. We stop shaping our world and instead start being shaped by it. Reaction is a survival instinct. It's useful in emergencies, but most of life is not an emergency. Most situations don't require a snap judgment. They require a thoughtful response. And thoughtful responses don't come from pressure. They come from presence. To create before you react means to choose response over reflex. It means you lead the moment instead of letting the moment lead you. When we react, we give our power away. We let the environment decide how we feel, what we do, and who we become. We let someone else's energy dictate ours. But when we create, when we pause, reflect, and act from intention, we reclaim that power. We become architects, not just responders. We move with purpose instead of being pulled by pressure. In leadership, reacting too quickly can be costly. It can fracture trust, escalate conflict, and limit vision. A reactive leader might solve a problem in the moment, but create 3 more in the process. A creative leader, on the other hand, steps back and sees the whole picture. They don't just answer, they design. They don't just speak. They understand, and they don't just solve, they build. Creating before reacting doesn't mean being slow. It means being strategic. It means knowing the difference between urgency and importance. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not act right away. Sometimes the most effective move is to pause, breathe, and let clarity rise to the surface. Because clarity rarely shouts. It whispers, and you can't hear it when you're rushing to react. Even in our relationships, the difference between reacting and creating is monumental. A reactive conversation is about defending, about being right, about proving something, but a creative conversation is about listening. It's about understanding. It's about building something stronger than what was there before. Most arguments aren't about the issue. They're about how we handle the issue. And how we handle it depends on whether we're reacting or creating. Reaction thrives in chaos. Creation thrives in calm. That's why cultivating internal peace is so essential. When your mind is still, your choices become intentional. You're no longer pulled by every passing thought or triggered by every external comment. You can feel emotions without being controlled by them. You can acknowledge pressure without letting it dominate your decisions. That space, that pause is where all your strength lies. The digital age makes reaction feel like a requirement. Social media moves fast. Opinions spread in seconds. But just because everyone else is reacting doesn't mean you have to. You're allowed to be the person who takes a beat, who waits for the facts, who processes before posting, who speaks from wisdom instead of noise. In doing so, you model a different way, a more grounded, impactful way. When you create before you react, you become proactive in your life. You start thinking ahead. You start making decisions based on your values, not just your circumstances. You stop firefighting and start vision building. You begin to trust your own voice more than the volume of the world around you. And in that space of intentionality, something powerful begins to unfold. You stop living from reaction and start living from design. The best leaders, the best thinkers, the best creators, they don't rush to answer every demand. They don't let noise dictate their next move. They create space before they respond. They step back so they can step forward with clarity. They understand that wisdom is not loud, it's quiet, it's deliberate, it's chosen, and it always begins by creating before reacting. Peace isn't a one-time achievement. It's not something you stumble upon after a break, through, or discover at the top of a mountain. It's a choice, and not a dramatic, life-altering choice either, but a quiet, consistent one. It's a daily decision, often made in small, unnoticed moments. And that's what makes it powerful, because anything you must choose again and again becomes a habit. And habits shape lives far more deeply than grand gestures ever could. Every day, we're presented with opportunities to choose pressure. The alarm clock rings and the world comes rushing in emails, deadlines, opinions, comparisons. It's easy to slip into the default, rush, react, perform, but peace invites us to start differently, to pause, to breathe, to remind ourselves that we are not behind, that the day hasn't gotten away from us yet, that before we give ourselves to the world, we must return to ourselves. Peace isn't passive, it requires presence. It asks you to be awake, not just to what's happening around you, but to what's happening within you. It invites you to listen to the tension in your shoulders, the pace of your breath, the thoughts you've been rehearsing all morning. Choosing peace means noticing these things before they take over. It means regulating instead of ignoring, responding instead of reacting, centering yourself before the world decides your direction. Sometimes choosing peace means walking away from arguments you could win. Sometimes it means staying quiet when you want to prove a point. Sometimes it means taking a break when everything around you screams, keep going. Choosing peace doesn't always feel heroic. Often it feels invisible. But over time, those invisible decisions shape your emotional landscape. They become the soil where your inner strength grows. There's a kind of peace that's misunderstood. One that people confuse with avoidance or apathy. But real peace isn't about escaping life. It's about engaging with it differently. It's about showing up fully present, fully grounded, fully aware. You don't choose peace because you're weak. You choose it because you're done letting the world dictate your internal state, because you've realized that reaction may be instinctual, but peace is transformational. Peace is often found in the pauses, the decision to drink your coffee slowly, the moment you put your phone down during a conversation, the deep breath you take before answering a tough question. These aren't trivial acts. They're declarations. They're you saying, I will not be rushed into a life I didn't choose. That kind of presence is rare, and rare things, when practiced daily, become sacred. You don't have to feel peaceful to choose peace. That's the myth. You might feel overwhelmed, frustrated, even angry, and still, you can choose how you show up. Choosing peace isn't about denying your emotions. It's about honoring them without letting them drive the car. It's about saying, yes, I feel this, and I will respond with clarity instead of chaos. That's where real emotional intelligence lives, in the space between the feeling and the choice. Choosing peace daily also means redefining success. It means letting go of the idea that productivity equals worth, that constant hustle equals progress, that stress equals commitment. Peace challenges those ideas. It whispers maybe success is being at ease with yourself. Maybe it's knowing your limits. Maybe it's saying no without guilt. Maybe it's doing less but doing it well. And every time you align with that voice, your life becomes more yours. It's easy to choose peace when things are going well, but the real test is in the storm, when deadlines stack up, when someone disappoints you, when your plans fall apart. Those are the moments when peace feels furthest, and that's exactly when it matters most. Because peace chosen under pressure is peace that sticks. It becomes a kind of quiet courage, a kind of stillness that isn't shaken by chaos. Peace isn't a finish line, it's a compass. You won't always get it right. You'll slip into urgency, you'll react before you pause, you'll let the noise win some days, but the beautiful thing is, peace doesn't keep score, it doesn't punish you, it simply waits. And when you return to it, when you make that quiet daily choice, it meets you with open arms every single time. When we look back on the lives we've lived, it won't be the urgency that defined us. It will be the clarity with which we move through the noise. It won't be how fast we climbed, but how centered we stayed. It won't be the hustle that mattered, but the harmony we chose to protect. And this is the heart of it all. Peace is not a destination, it's a daily discipline. It's not something we stumble into, it's something we stand for even when pressure is louder. In a world that constantly tells us to go faster, to do more, to be everywhere, we need people who are willing to slow down. People who are brave enough to choose stillness in a culture addicted to speed. People who don't just react, but respond with intention. people who trade chaos for clarity, distraction for direction, pressure for peace. The world doesn't need more frantic achievers. It needs more calm builders, more thoughtful creators, more present leaders, people who are rooted, not rushed, focused, not frantic, peaceful, not passive. Because peace is not the absence of effort, it's the presence of alignment. You can choose to live differently, to step out of the noise, to lead from the inside out, not by abandoning ambition, but by anchoring it. Not by rejecting responsibility, but by responding with rhythm. You don't need to prove your worth through pressure. You already have value. You already have something to give the world. And it's clearest when your mind is quiet. So each day before the world starts spinning, ask yourself, what kind of life am I building? And more importantly, what kind of state am I building it from? Because if the foundation is peace, the structure will hold. If the starting point is calm, the direction will stay true. Peace isn't about withdrawing from life, it's about entering it with wisdom. It's about showing up fully, but not frantically. It's about making room for what matters most, not just what demands your attention. It's the quiet strength to say no, the deep breath before the decision, the centered posture that holds steady even when the ground shakes. The truth is, peace has always been available to you. It's not somewhere out there, it's within you, waiting for permission. Waiting for you to believe that you're allowed to choose differently. Waiting for you to remember that stillness is not failure. It's where your clearest voice begins. So as you leave this space, carry this with you. Every moment is a crossroads. You can chase the pressure, or you can return to peace. One will leave you drained, the other will lead you home.